Hi grade 9s, it's Miss Thungaraj here. I just want to show you where you can find assignment number 2 on Google Classroom. It says Elizabeth Thungaraj posted a new assignment, assignment number 2. That is your assignment. So that's one thing you need to be aware of on Google Classroom. The other thing you need to be aware of is the post that's underneath that. It says worksheets and videos to help with assignment number 2. And there you're going to find a document that teaches you a bit about geometry. And I'll also post all my videos in that link as well, so that everything is together. So as I'm doing my videos, I want you to be aware of the two documents. Today when I make my video, I'm going to start looking at the document that is right here, the plane geometry one. So maybe before watching my video, you want to press pause now and you want to open up that document so you can see what it looks like. So you just saw on the screen a picture of the first page of the plane geometry worksheet. You can see that on that page, we're going to do a vocabulary check. We're learning a whole bunch of new words that have to do with geometry, and those words you are responsible for. So what I suggested is that you look up the word in your mother tongue, whether it be Arabic or whatever other language you might know. But these words you need to understand. So we're going to spend our first lesson just looking at the words and looking at diagrams that go along with these words. So the first word is complementary, and complementary just means that two angles, when you add them together, add up to 90 degrees. You can see that the 40 and the 50, if you add them together, you get 90, and that makes sense because right here, we see the symbol that means 90 degrees. So the first word is complementary. The next term is supplementary angles. And a supplementary angle reminds me of a protractor. So I'm going to show you an image of a protractor just to remind you what that is. The reason a supplementary angle reminds me of a protractor is because on this image here, I can draw a protractor. And I know that if I drew a protractor, over here would be 0. And if I went all the way around a protractor, this would be 180. That means that these two angles on the inside, the 120 and the 60, should be equal to 180, and that's definitely true. So anytime you have a straight line like that and it's split in half, then you can think of drawing a protractor and knowing that the two angles on the inside need to add up to 180 like a protractor. The third word that we need to know is opposite angles. And opposite angles happen when you can see the letter X in your geometry problem. So right here, I have an X. And the reason these two both are labeled Y is because when you draw an X, the ones that are opposite to each other, they are the same. So if this right here was 80, that means this one right here is 80. And the same thing is if you look at it the other way, then if this, whatever this one is here, this one is also the same. Now, the interesting thing about opposite angles is I actually have two types of questions in one. I have opposites, but I also have supplementary. So let's change this into an example. Let's put some numbers in. So let's say, for example, that this right here is 85. Okay, well, if that's 85, then the one that's opposite to it is also 85. Okay, but now I look at this part of the question and all of a sudden I see that I could draw a protractor. I know that this would be 0 and this right here would be 180. So that means that my X plus the 85 need to add up to 180 degrees. So I need to know what number plus 85 equals 180. Well, I can balance this equation. I can go minus 185, minus 180, minus 85. These cancel out. X is equal to 180 minus 85 gives me 95. That means this right here is 95. And I'm going to turn my cell phone around. And then because of opposite angles, if this is 95, then this over here is also 95. So that was opposite and supplementary in the same question. The next word is perpendicular, and perpendicular just means that two lines form a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to look at my pad of paper. I can see that right here, this is a 90-degree angle. I can see that because my pad of paper forms the letter L here. So I'm going to take my pad of paper. I'm going to use it for a ruler, and then I'm going to use it for a ruler here. And this right here, these two lines are perpendicular. And sometimes you'll see that textbooks or worksheets might use this symbol to mean perpendicular. But what's really important to remember that is when you have lines that are perpendicular, there's a 90-degree between the two of them. The last two words that we're going to talk about in depth today is parallel lines and transversals. So I'm going to use my pad of paper again to show you how to draw two parallel lines. I'm going to trace the top of my pad. I'm going to trace the bottom of my pad of paper. So I've traced both of them. And I end up with those two lines. And those two lines are parallel. And I'm going to use arrows. Those symbols right there mean that the two lines are parallel. And what parallel means is that the two lines are going in the same direction, and these two lines are never going to touch each other. If you imagine this pad of paper, the top of the paper and the bottom of the paper, if you kept going on forever and ever, would always be apart. They would never connect. That's what parallel lines mean. So these two lines are parallel, and those arrows on the lines signify they're parallel. And then the last word is this word. I'm going to first draw what it looks like. Okay. The last word is transversal. Okay. Transversal, all it means is a line that crosses two other lines. So here I have two parallel lines. These lines are parallel, and I have a transversal that passes through the two lines. So that's what parallel and transversal mean. On the worksheet, it talks about three other terms. It talks about alternate angles, it talks about corresponding angles, and it talks about interior angles on the same side of the transversal. We're going to leave those for our next video and just focus on the words we talked about today. So we're going to talk about complementary, supplementary, opposite, parallel, perpendicular, and transversal. If you know those words, then that makes me happy for today's video. And we're going to try a couple of questions that deal with those words. But before I do that, I just want to show you a picture of the other terms so you're aware of them, so you're ready to deal with them tomorrow. During today's video, we looked at the first page of the plane geometry worksheets. We looked at all the vocabulary, the terminology that we're going to use throughout this unit. Now that we've finished looking at the words, what we want to do is we want to answer some questions. And so you can find these questions in the plane geometry worksheets on the first page. But you can also notice that those questions that we're going to look at now are also the first questions in assignment 2. So we're actually going to do the first questions for assignment 2 together right now. Let's look at those first questions for assignment number 2. And the first question requires us to look at 3 problems, 3 geometry problems, and decide which one is the complementary question, which one is the opposite question, and which one is the supplementary question. So first, let's remember complementary. Complementary means that the 2 angles add up to 90 degrees. So it can't be this one because this one is the one that looks like a protractor, and a protractor adds up to 180. It can't be this one because here we have the letter X, and the letter X means they're opposite, so they should be the same. So that means it must be this one. This is a picture of 2 complementary angles. And I see this symbol right here, and this symbol means they add up to 90 degrees. So I'm going to do y plus 29 equals 90. I'm going to balance the equations. So my y is 90 minus 29 is going to give me 61 degrees. Okay, so this is 61, this is 29, 61 plus 29 adds up to 90. So we've done the complementary one. Now we want to find the opposite one. The opposite one is the one that looks like the X, and when they're opposite, they are the same, they are equal. So that's not a letter X. This one right here is a letter X. So if this is 61, that means this also is 61 because they are opposite. Okay, and the last one, supplementary. When you see the word supplementary, I want you to think about a protractor that starts over here at 0, goes to 180. So if I draw a protractor over here, it means that these 2 together need to add up to 180 degrees. So 29 degrees plus X add up to 180. That means that X is 180 minus 29, which I believe is going to give you 151 degrees. This is 151. Okay, so that was our first lesson on geometry. You are now finished the first question for assignment number 2. You can write it down and save it for your notes. Tomorrow we'll do our second lesson and we'll do the next questions together. If you have any questions, I will be on Google Meet in the afternoon. I hope to see many of you there so we can talk about the next 2 weeks and we can talk about math together.